There we go. Here we go. Here we go. Welcome back, guys, to the fitness podcast. I always get stumped in the very beginning these days because of Zoom. Every minute they're like, "This meeting is now recorded," and so on. It just it does kill me up. But yeah, welcome back, guys. Hope you've had a really, really good day. Super excited, obviously, to have Emily and Nathan on the podcast once again. And we're going to this week discuss our experiences in coaching so far, especially online, because a lot of people listen to us, our clients are off online, and we wanted to kind of dive deep into our journeys with online coaching and how we found it, because obviously you'll have even several PTs listening to this podcast as well, so potentially PTs but also wanting to get an online game. So Nathan, let's kick you off as well over here. Like, obviously, when did you initially kickstart online? Was it like 2016, 2017, or was it around that time? And how do you think the world has evolved, coaching has evolved? Let's do a deep dive in this.
Yeah, I mean, I started online coaching in 2015 actually. With a company I used to work for, PTing. We did it alongside it. It was just something that they offered supplemental, just tried to get people on board around the world whilst they had a name. So it was very, very interesting because the dynamics have changed massively in online coaching. Like, because it's become more accessible, it's like Forex trading. Every Tom, Dick and wanker wants to do Forex at the moment and become this trader and sit at a beach club and trade their pennies for pounds. And it's the same as online coaching, is that the accessibility have increased so much that it's a different kettle of fish now that it was when we started. Originally 2015, 5 years ago, people that did online coaching were more intermediate. People that had trained before, people that lift weights, they knew exactly what they were doing. They may have had PT before, and it was just a general transition for people that wanted to be able to afford coaching, but they couldn't afford or couldn't get to that person on one-to-one. So it used to be different back in the day. You could just give someone instructions of here's a training plan, here's a nutrition plan, go and do it, and people would generally go and do it. And then as we've come through the last 5 years, the accessibility, the increase of popularity has meant that there's a different type of client that's coming through the door, and the different needs and different wants and different desires of these individuals. So, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I seen a fundamental shift in who was marketed to and how we actually approach coaching itself. I think for the most part, that's when general pop, in terms of complete beginners, people that had never trained before, people that were doing home workouts whilst getting online coaching, was really, really popular. So, I think in my just a short overview is that the industry has changed massively to accommodate these type of individuals, which is absolutely fantastic. Everyone should be able to get the slice of their own pie and be able to breed the benefits of this online. It just has become a different complete ball game over the last 5 years, definitely. And even if you look 10 years ago, there wasn't that many people doing online apart from the OGs in the space. And when they were doing it 10 years ago, it was those competitors, it was those intermediate lifters. And now anyone with a laptop and anyone wanting to get some exercise, or so that's anyone with an iPhone and a gym membership, can now become an online trained client.
But let's go back to like early on, right? Like the experience of online. How did you know what to do and stuff? Because obviously, like you mentioned, 2015, right? So that's like a good 6 years ago. What did it initially look like? And obviously, like if you look at systems now, it's completely different, right? Let's talk about the growth. And because obviously we realized, okay, we need to put more information here. We need to, like, even I remember 2018, there wasn't as much information, for example, in check-ins that you'd end up putting yourself. It was only recently, I think, things have now changed up. And there's a lot more detail within probably online now than one-to-one now, I'd say, versus obviously back then, one-to-one was a lot more detailed versus online. And I think the dynamic has now shifted. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree?
No, yeah, definitely. I think that is related back to that whole thing of the client's needs and the client's the people that are actually getting the service are different. And two, like, I would more class myself as a therapist coach as I would, 5 years ago, I would have said I would be a hardcore body transformational coach. And now I'm just a coach, because we deal more holistically with people's problems, because ultimately people are paying for their problems to be solved. And now with the change in genre and niche of people, they have different problems. Most general pop clients don't need to just be told what to do. They can't, because there's a deeper layer. There's another layer to that, whether that's self-limiting beliefs or that is not knowing what to do to the baseline level of how do I pick this weight up? What weight do I pick up next? How do I then progress that forwards? And then all the way to, okay, I'm dealing with these social pressures or the social hierarchy, or dealing with family internal pressures, which your job as a coach, you may not think that that's what your job is, but ultimately your job is to navigate adherence and navigate people following these plans that you're giving them. But if you look at the deeper core of how people follow, is that they need to have these things, these social constructs, these adherence strategies, these ability to self-limiting beliefs. They're all things that will make the plan easier to follow, because plans are only as good as the ability to execute them.
Yeah, Emily, what would you like? What's your experience, obviously, with the online game? Is it similar to Nathan's? Is it? Yeah, let's discuss that with you as well.
Yeah, I mean, because me and Nathan worked in the same place, I think our history in coaching has been fairly similar. It used to be this thing that was very much a side hustle when you got the chance to get around to it, and yeah, it didn't take up too much of your consciousness to actually sit there and do the coaching in terms of online. Then moving forward, I transitioned purely to online in December 2018, and since then, it opened up to being a lot more specific, and also really getting to know people at a deeper level, I think, which I felt that I didn't get to do whilst doing 50 actual PT hours and a lot of admin on top of that. So, I mean, I agree with everything that Nathan said right now. Like, nowadays we are coaches, which is a very global term. I think it's so much more than just training nutrition. We are literally problem solvers and accountability givers that is so dependent on that person and what they need. So yeah, I mean, I love it now. I used to think that it wasn't something that I would ever consider getting into full time, but I just think it's an amazing job. Like, actually makes me want to wake up at 5 every day and actually do my shit. So I don't know. It's for me, it's amazing. Personally, professionally, and the reach that you have in the world, the ability to actually help people on a whole different side of the world, it's just amazing. And then being able to bring all of these people together into a tribe, and yeah, I honestly, it's so good.
Yeah, I think what's amazing about it, I would give credit also the Gen Pop, who have actually been open-minded about, I need online potentially. Because you think about it, right? Like, why would you want to go to online? Because firstly, from what I remember, like maybe even 5 years ago, like Nathan said, it was a lot of the hardcore, like let's say bodybuilding coaches who did online. That's the only ones I knew who did it. Like otherwise, it would have to be, PT, get into the PT world, and then from there onwards, if you become very, very elite, then you're online. That's how I always perceived it. I never perceived it as like anyone can become an online coach. I thought it's like a graduation step. Once you're like at a really, once you put in your hours, once you've done like, really, really well in terms of like just getting results, then you're into the online game. So I always found it like fascinating to see then General Pop, like from probably 2017 onwards, become very much like, oh, I want to be part of this. And they were very much like, okay, I can probably do this as well. And what happened was they become a lot more autonomous within the process, right? Because they realized, okay, I've got this coach, they've given me this, they've given me that. I need to go out there and execute. And I think what that did was, it stopped maybe from them going back to like PTs. Some obviously did work with PTs, but they realized this is probably what I needed all round long, like all year long, or most likely since I started my like training career. If I needed coaching, this is what I needed. And I think it's quite powerful. Even like obviously when I came into an online game, I was working with like Nathan, stuff like that. So we've seen the transition from like how it was in the very beginning in terms of like the detail. We spoke about it earlier, which like there wasn't much that even us coaches would give. It would maybe be a couple of maybe like lines and sentences. If I'm going to be honest with you, I remember early on, it'd be like, okay, cool, pretty good stuff. What changes should we make here? A couple of questions you ask, and then that's it. Now you got to think about like how you speak on video potentially, how you do this, how you got your systems. Now it's like a business. As you mentioned there correctly, it was a side hustle potentially maybe 5 years ago, and people saw it as an afterthought. Whereas now it's very much like, well, actually, I can get, if I get into this and I'm very successful at it, like this is going to be there for the long game, and this is going to be here for like number of years to come through. And also the reach that we have, right? Like you end up working with clients and like clients you've never met. Like me and Nathan, we've gone to the States and we've met clients that, you know, we've never met, we've coached, and we spent like dinner with them, we spent Thanksgiving with these people. That wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the online game. But it's also credit, and I want to give also credit to like the actual clients who, like I said, buy into it. And you know, because if you're across the world, across the country, or in a different, completely different state, you're not really thinking about like online at that point. It's only until, I guess, social media has helped, the internet's helped, but also them being open-minded to this, I think is genius, to be honest, because otherwise they wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't be here talking about it right now, to be honest.
No, it's one of those things that the early adopters normally always win when it comes to whatever, even if it flops, like anything, right? Like, so when you do take this up as a career, or you do take this up as something that is a longer term, you think that it can work. I think the world is so big now, the reach is so big, and the ability to create is so easy that whatever you choose to put in, you generally do see a reflection coming out on the outside. But I've only seen that really come out in the last 5-7 years, where literally you could put out anything and you would have a tribe ready for you to uptake that, and that would be a small amount, but over time that would grow and grow and grow. Whereas maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there were tribes, but they weren't the internet tribes. They were tribes around your house. They were the people that were close to you, that were the friends and family, that was the local gym person. And maybe that's where you'd learn and that's where you'd skill your trade from. But because there's so much now opportunity and so much easy, the ability to create so easy, you can go and pluck out, you know, you can pluck out 50 people, 100 people, and now you have a business. You have a fucking very, very good business and a long-term business, because 50 people turn one referral each. That's 100 people. They refer one person. That's 200 people. They'll refer another person. That's 400 people. You know, by the time you've done that, you know, what is it? Is it you only need 1,000 true fans?
Yeah.
You know, that is a very, very good analogy. You only need a true 1,000 people to make a very, very, very profitable, very, very scalable, very impact-driven business. If you had 1,000 people who loved you, adored you, were able to listen to your message, you're set for life. And especially when it's in the area that you want to help is incredible.
Yeah. Would you say that's for any like online business anyway? Take away like the body transformation world, right? Like that advice you just mentioned is like applicable to take away it could be anything, it could be drop shipping right now, to be honest, but not even drop shipping, could be anything, could be any online course you create. You know, you could still have that advice what Nathan mentioned. Question for you guys though, where do you see the online game going now? Do you just go strength from strength? Is it going to change up more? You know, where do you see the world going at this stage with the online game?
I feel like people are maybe niching a little bit more. It's like it went quite wide, and people are now going more narrow in how they speak to their target markets, the people that they want to help. That's at least how I see it. Yeah, I feel like people are finding more niches, but that might just be my opinion, rather than doing just general.
You know, I 100% agree. I think what that will mean is that the online game stays. It will grow so wide that you won't see how wide it is, because you're focusing on this depth, and it's growing so much from a perspective of like, instead of it like your depth is here, but it's like chunking that way, right, across down. So like you can get a coach that, you know, I have a therapist that I could speak online with and never really have contact with. You could have a coach that helps you with your business performance, or you could have a coach, a mentor. You could have a business mentor. You could have, you know, that is the online game per se in terms of online coaching, because they're all the same. It's caregivers, right? So like that could be your 7-figure coach, that could be your 6-figure coach, that could be your PT qualification. That's an online coach. That's all delivered online. You could have an online coach for body composition. You can even get, I mean, Kay might have seen this before, you can get a fucking golf coach, online golf coach, where they have membership portals, where they technically analyze your swing and you send it in for video feedback on a weekly basis. Like, there's so much of a niche that it's so wide, it's actually infinite in width, because the internet and the way that the internet is going is growing so rapidly that we don't see how much growth it is. We only see what we need to utilize and pull into our little space. So I don't see it. It's not going anywhere. It's never ever going to go anywhere, because it's only the internet and the AI systems. It's just the game will change. The game is changing every single 6 months in terms of the delivery, and then the input required from a coach's perspective to get a desired result. Because whether it is, it's always about social norms, I believe. Like anything, what we want is about social norms. So if it becomes socially norm to have on your iPhone your online coach, or to have someone at the fingertips of your button, or the buttons at your fingertips, to have the social norm to track resting heart rate, because all of the watches do it. If set steps weren't things 10 years ago, people just went out for walks. But now steps are a really big thing. And then whatever this next thing is, whatever they put on the next iPhone, whatever they put on the next Galaxy, whatever they put on the next MacBook, whatever they put as a new AI system, that will be how the evolution of the online game grows, because it's based on the consumer's perceived needs by these larger scale companies. So if Apple choose to make I don't know what they could choose to make, and then we'd all have to adapt to that specific mode of doing stuff. Same as how like WhatsApp now have 1.5 times on their audio message, which is fucking game changer. It changes our world. Like, people might not know, but like if you have a client who wants to talk to you, generally phone calls don't work because there's only so many hours in the day. But if someone can send an audio message and you don't have to listen for 20 minutes, you can listen for 6 or 4 or 5, and you can catch everything that you need to say because you listen on 1.5 or 2 times. That changes your market. That changes what you can do. That changes the online game completely. It changes what they deliver. It changes that they can listen back to you to 1.5, so you can give more information over a short space of time. So it doesn't go anywhere. It just gets better by whatever the social norms happen within what technology can create. And I think as long as online coaches and people that are in this coaching, caregiving world will be able to latch onto and make useful, that's how. And the faster you do that, I believe that's how you go up in what you deliver. Because as always, like you could deliver bricks and mortar, or in terms of online coaching via emails now, and that would look shite compared to someone that was doing an app if the apps were normal. If that was normality, like, I'm not saying that emails and doing your check-ins via emails are shite. What I'm saying is that in the perception of someone that has an app at the fingertips, has all of these communications with their coach at the fingertips, you'd have to change the game a little bit for yourself if you wanted to kind of compete, if that was something that you wanted to do. So I think it's going nowhere in long-winded.
I think you said it correctly. And I think also it will be driven by also because the online game is only growing, right? Like people now come into the game will never ever coach like a person, like in person, will never ever coach, and they'll go straight into online. And then what will happen is obviously the world is going to demand 5 years ago, 10 years ago, was there apps? Was there even apps like Trainerize, True Coach? I don't think there were, right? So the online game is kind of dictating that. I know they're also driven, they're kind of used for one-to-one at the same time, but I think just the way the online world is going to, it's only gonna, and also it's gonna fast track our systems, I personally believe as well. Or we have to move with the times. I think as business owners, we'll probably start to realize this system doesn't work now. Like what Nathan just mentioned about emails, right? He was doing that for how long? You're doing it for how long, Nate? 4 or 5 years?
5 years.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, I need to move with the times here because this is where it's at right now, right? Yeah. So I think that's what's going to happen gradually to most like online businesses now. It's what systems are the best in the moment right now, And then the ones who don't catch up will kind of see maybe drop-offs potentially in terms of their own performances or whatever's going on. I mean, I think the cream will always rise to the top. So if you're a good coach, and even if you still use emails, like you'll still get results in my opinion. Like, great example, if Jordan Peterson doesn't use an app right now and he just use emails, would he still get results? Most likely because of his reputation and who he is. But if you're new to the game and you're like, I'm trying to compete against the whole world basically, you're gonna have to always catch up to the systems around you and the systems on what you think is working. Otherwise you're just gonna be like, I'm here and that's it. So I definitely think the online game is interesting. So where does this leave, like, let's say the one-to-one world? I just spoke about, like, potentially people may come into the game now in an industry where they've never done like literally in-person training at all, and then they go straight into like online. Where do you think this leaves the whole one-to-one game?
I don't think it's going anywhere, the one-to-one either. I think inherently humans are pack animal and we want to have that physical connection. And I think you'll seek out what you need in the moment. And if you can only think that online is for you, you will go online. But there's obviously good things to come to have an actual physical coach there to teach you the things that we can't do to the max, right? As if we were there with them in person. And some people genuinely want to have that physical, I'm here, I'm getting my hour, I'm seeing my friend, or whatever it's going to be for them. And they can probably train a lot harder if they have their coach there. So it just depends. And I think, and then going back to maybe having people doing more like high-end training, and like they will always have coaches. People who are more advanced will definitely have coaches. They probably have online as well as in-house, but yeah. So I don't see the personal stuff going anywhere. It's like any old trait ever, like it never went. Yeah, can you imagine having an online barber who would like, yeah, bring out the two, and you and you start doing your own hair canal.
So you know what? Funny, I said this to my brother the other day. I was like, I have a feeling in the future one day there will be like some sort of like a Black Mirror episode where you start cutting your own hair, and it will be designed. And I saw an advert of Kevin Bacon the other day doing it in this like an E advert. He was like giving some guy like cut it this way, cut it that way, and then there's like a camera there. I think you never know if Elon Musk is still alive. Anything is very much possible if he gets into this kind of space as well with AI and so on.
It's the same as no guitar tuning. This is how I imagine barbers going, right? So like imagine doing your own hair, but there's an AI system that was like a guitar tuner where like when you ping the E chord, the E string, and it tells you how far you are away from being an E string, and then all you do is tune it to get to the point where it's an E string. And the AI, and this may be a fucking good idea. If anyone's listening to this, I won't fucking copyright on this. But effectively, what you could do is you could sit in front of the camera, it'll scale your face up, and then you'll start shaving, and then it'll recognize how far you are down compared to your head high, and it'll say, okay, like keep on going until it hits green. When it hits green, you stop, you move back a bit, and you go again. And it's like the guitar string where you just keep plucking it and then you twist the knob until you get to the point where it's actually the E. And you could do that for the sides for sure. I'm not sure how you do the cut off the top. Maybe you go, okay, let me just grab a bit. It gives you the green light, then you cut it. Then you do another one, it gives you the green light, and you cut it again. Then you've done your own hair.
But then the question is, would you rather do that than to go and have that? Because it's kind of like an event. You book it into your calendar, you have the barber, you have the conversation, you might have a beer in your hand. Like there's so much more than just the service that you pay for when you do something physical, right?
Yeah.
So
I think the barbershop will never die. Personally, I think people will always people actually cut their hair now a lot more because of COVID. Like I've had some clients be like, "Do you just cut your own hair?" It looks obviously terrible, but still. And I'm like, just go to the barbershop. But at the same time, people are like, they're okay with it. They're like, I'm cutting my own hair now. It's okay. You just deal with it. Yeah. But I want to go back. Nathan mentioned about, being a therapist now. Let's talk about that, the evolution basically, right? Like, did you realize that's going to happen in the coaching world for yourself? Like, let's go back to like the one-to-one days. Did you have a lot of these deep conversations with your clients and be like, this is what's going on right now? And, this, you may have had a couple, but you're talking about online game now. You said, you're probably a part-time therapist, probably going forward. Let's dive deep into that a bit more and kind of, really dissect that a bit better.
Yeah, I think, by the way, I 100% agree with Emily just before we finished. I 100% agree from a barber's perspective. Like, I went and got a mani pedi haircut and then get a face mask at the same time, all in one go. It was fantastic.
I did that last week.
Unbelievable.
Like, seem to do it from your own sofa, right? It just wouldn't.
Look at these bad boys.
Yeah,
absolutely fantastic. Like, I never had my hands done before or my feet, but as soon as I went out, it left, like, I got compliments straight away. And people notice, and maybe I just had some fucking rusty ass claw, like toes beforehand, and maybe they're like, "Oh, finally you've fucking done something about it." But like, I generally think it's an experience.
Up to yourself 1 point on the attractiveness scale.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Self-love, eh? Hashtag self-love.
Self-love, yeah, definitely, and definitely a 9 out of 10 now. But like, going back to that therapy stuff, I think initially when I did one-to-one, I tried so hard not to be soft, and then I overcompensated to be hard. And it's just, for me, it was the last 5 years has been accumulation of understanding what doesn't work by pissing people off, and then realizing what does work by seeing the response, what you do when you do a certain thing. I didn't read a book about psychology. I've never read any formalized training about, coaching. I've never really done that. And that was probably partly just I didn't want to know the right way. I just wanted to find out myself. Maybe that's a bit of ego, but it's fine. And as I went through the 5 years, I realized the more conversations I was having that would end up with a client being quite vulnerable about what they were struggling with would end up with a solution because they did something about it afterwards. The less I probed, the less we spoke in detail about actual problems to solve, the more we just painted over or brushed over these problems that were actually coming to spearheads and not people losing weight, and the outcomes that we were trying to get weren't being met. So 5 years ago I fought fire with fire. Why the fuck are you not doing this type of thing? And like, you drag people around the gym saying, you need to be a piece of shit, like, let's do this going. And they used to just throw people around. I did that for years. And
so well.
Pardon?
I remember this so well.
Yeah, and like, I've been a guy that actually dragged the guy out of a shower. Like, I dragged the guy out of a shower because he was late for his session and then decided to have a shower before his session. I was like, you're going to get fucking sweaty anyway. Get out of the shower now. And like, this guy's millionaire, CEO of a company, and he's just been dragged out of a shower by a 24-year-old pipsqueak. and then you do that session, you get, like, I'm not gonna lie, it felt fucking great to be a fucking boss man for a minute, but then I realized how shit it was overall. I made how the way I made him feel, probably the way that it actually didn't result in anything positive from our relationship. And then I started to change the way I did things, and for example, instead of like saying, not calling people out, but having difficult conversations on the gym floor, I would take them into a room and just have a conversation with them. And actually, my perception also changed about what they were struggling with, because when you realize when people will be vulnerable, when they won't be vulnerable, and they're not going to be vulnerable when they're faced with other people around them that they don't want to perceive to be a certain way. And that's okay. People don't want to express their vulnerabilities with people that they don't actually know or care about, just random gym goers or people that are PTs that don't care. So it was an evolution to see that, okay, well, what actually makes people tick? What actually makes an outcome great, and what actually goes from a problem to a solution? So, the more I did this, the more I then transitioned online, the more I then started probing in terms of understanding this layer of vulnerability that is absolutely essential to any type of coaching relationship. The therapeutic, the relationship, alliance, whatever you want to call it, relies on trust, and it relies on the ability to listen. It relies on the ability to ask challenging questions, and it relies on not falling into the drama triangle of being a victim, hero, or persecutor. So once you find this and you navigate it, you realize that the more you want to be the person that says, fucking come on, let's do this, you realize the less actually you get from an individual. And I'll argue with anyone to the high heels about this, is that the more you feel like someone does that, you have to look at the next 6 weeks worth of results as opposed to the next 1 week, because you'll get a triggered response negatively to say, fuck you, I'm going to go and follow my diet and lose weight now, that because you've persecuted me to do that. But then you look 6 weeks down the line and they're still struggling with the same damn problem that you had 6 weeks ago. And you're like, I didn't solve nothing. And for me, that made me feel like shit, because my job and my self-worth is wrapped up in my ability to solve problems of my clients. So 6 weeks later, we're still solving the same problem. I'm like, I didn't do what was needed. And it always came down back to me. So anyway, going on from this, I find that the relationship that most people need, the consumer has changed, the niche has changed. So people are struggling with those small things that make massive difference, like the self-belief to leave food at a dinner table when their parents have said, eat the second plate, or for them to go to a social event and not feel pressured into having the food. Like, these things you don't get to speak about because people don't think they're normal. People think that they're just a problem with them. They think that they're the issue. And actually, it's a normal thing. Like, everyone struggles with peer pressure. Everyone struggles with the social hierarchy. Everyone struggles with fitting in and wanting to fit in, but not wanting to also compromise their goals. So when you then look at that, how do you get to clients' vulnerabilities? How do you get to clients opening up? And how do you get to the point where they're saying, this is my problem, I need a solution, how do we do this? And you don't get there through persecution. You don't get through there through like guilt and shame. You don't get through there by not taking action either, by glossing over it. And I think, you know, having a therapist in myself, at least in the last 6 months, has really opened my eyes to, even, you know, before, like the stuff I'm doing now and with her and the things that she's asking me is making me realize over the last 5 years when I did it great and when I did it shit. And, you know, the stuff I'm doing great is the challenging, and the stuff that I'm doing great is like the setup so that it doesn't make it feel like it's a massive problem or whatnot. It's the support, it's the empathy, it's the understanding. And they're all down to a therapeutic relationship, not a persecutor, which most PTs, or hero that most people, PTs try and assume, because PTs try and assume that hero role of, I'll solve your problems, I know what I need to do, I know what you need to do, why don't you just follow this? Why don't you do this? Because I'm a hero, I'm going to tell you what to do. It's actually coming down to, you're on the level playing field, and it's not higher or lower. But that only comes through understanding. So what I'm really trying to say is that over the last 5 years, it's changed from like a dictatorship, which most PTs assume because that's what they deem it to be, you know, that military. And clients also perceive that too. Clients say that they want to just be told what to do. The clients want to say, I need direction, I need to be pushed, I need the accountability. It's like, no, that's what you think you need. But what you actually need is to have someone that doesn't persecute you and doesn't force you to do something. Because if I'm forcing you to do it, you fucking don't want to do it anyway. So
And
what's the point?
Also, if you force them to do it, eventually they're not going to do it in the long term, right? So then
Exactly.
you lose out. So
yeah, if you need a coach to do anything, you're not doing it for the right reasons. Like, you should want a coach to improve, not need a coach to do a desired thing. So like, and this is why I don't really rate 60% of the PT industry, because most clients are like, I do it for the date in the diary, I do it if I don't have it booked in and I don't go to the gym. It's like, hang on a minute, so you're telling me in 15 years time, when you're wanting to be quote unquote healthy still, and you're still wanting to go on resistance training, you're going to need a PT to go to the gym? That doesn't make sense to me. You know, that's like me saying, I want to learn Spanish, but I'm not going to learn Spanish unless I have lessons, or unless I have lessons booked in the diary. But we know that if I really want to learn Spanish, I'm going to have to get the book out myself and write the damn words on the paper and spend some time to do that. And as much as that might be a good push, it's not the game. The game is longevity. The game is 10 years from now. The game is 15 years from now. And that's only going to come through a mutual relationship of you wanting to embark skills upon an individual and give them coaching to upskill themselves to make the right decisions, so then they can go and make the right decisions in the right time.
Yeah.
So that's what changed for me.
Yeah. I actually coaching very similar to like football management. That's how I've always seen it from when I first got into the industry. I was like, it's very similar to like football management. You're dealing with people. You're going to deal with someone who may need a kick off the backside. You need someone who, you know, put your arm around their shoulder, tell them it's all going to be all good. And I've always kind of seen it that way. Like, you know, football managers talk a lot about empathy. They're managing a ton of egos. We're doing the same thing, right? Like Nathan just mentioned there about managing guy who's the CEO of that company. He could have easily started a fight with Nathan that moment, right? If that was the case, Nathan, he could have started having a punch up with Nathan. Nathan could have got suspended. Anything could have been the case, right? Within that moment. But I think one thing I've realized as well over the last couple of years is like a lot of people are like to open up a lot more online quite easily. Like, you can ask them one question and you may get a paragraph back. Like, what do you think triggered this? And they'll come back to you and they'll just give you like a whole, like, my childhood was like this, my childhood was like that. And I think what advice, so let's give some advice to someone who is listening to this, maybe new to the industry. Would you say to them just roll with the punches, or would there be something that you say to them like, this is how you could potentially deal with it? Because obviously there's a lot to deal with. Like that's a lot to take in for someone who's new. And I think, they'll be like, whoa, okay, this person just told me this person told me that. What advice would you give someone then in that situation?
I think so, if someone is completely new, there is a huge value in having a coach and actually get coached for yourself. If you don't have anything to reference, what are you going to pull from? And especially if you haven't been on the gym floor. I know we mentioned it before, like now a lot of people might have never even worked on the gym floor, and they have very little to reference into what they're trying to actually serve these people. So I think getting a coach, if you're completely a beginner, like actually someone that will take you through the journey of getting coached, whether it is body composition or whether it is business, whether it is therapy, like whatever it is, but just learning from someone that is better from you. I think mentors are like the greatest assets we can invest in ourselves. So that would be my tip to start off with.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, I did the same thing when I got in the industry. Like I straight had mentors straight away. And that was something that was, looking back on it, I would have probably gone round and round in circles if I didn't have mentors, because I'd be like, okay, let me try it this way, let me try it that way. But I think it allowed me just to hone in on one thing straight away. And I was, again, making sure I was as good as possible in this one thing. And that was easier. But in the therapy route, do you think someone would struggle? Let's say someone who's like, Nathan mentioned the hardcore trainer, etc., right? Who just comes into that and then goes into online game, suddenly gets Julie right now. And she's mentioning about like her husband or whatever. Do you think that person then would really struggle? Well, what would you do in that instant? Let's say Nathan, take yourself 5 years ago, hardcore Nathan, trainer, did online. You must have had some of these occasions where a guy or a girl goes to you like, I'm struggling with this. In that moment, did you think, is this my skill set? What am I doing here? Because obviously, as part of online coaching, I think that's part of your skill set now, but that's also just developed. But what was the instance then when you first started? What was it like for you?
I think the problem is that there's a hell of a lot of confirmation bias, and like there's a hell of a lot of when you find your own tribe, you can actually just be a fucking dick, but still people would like you. So therefore, like you could be that hardcore Nathan, and I'd still have 50 to 100 people that like the hardcore Nathan,
Because that's what they know.
And that's what they know you for. And they. But the thing is that it's what is best for the client as opposed to what is best for my ego. So I don't think you have to change. I really don't. And there's still lots and lots of coaches that go down the persecutor role infinitely when they do coaching, and that's absolutely fine. And they love it, and their clients like it. But if you're looking at best practice, it doesn't sit well within what we know from a research perspective and what we know from a therapeutic perspective, what we know from a coaching perspective. It doesn't work. Like it works short term for some, it may not work at all for anybody. And that's where you like, the goal is to help everybody. In my opinion, the goal is to help everybody that steps through your door. And if you have to change the way you do stuff, I've changed myself fucking millions of times to accommodate people. Because if you start off in that persecutor role, you may get 10% people with positive outcomes. But if you start off in the research, understood coaching dynamic, you may help 90% people. And for me, or most people that get into the industry, you would rather help 90% people and maybe change the way you do stuff and hurt your ego and hurt maybe your growth or fixed mindset than sit around and just help 10% of your clients and then have to look for fucking another 50 because they keep telling you're a dick and then they're leaving. But you'll find people that will stay true to that and they'll be absolutely fine, but they will occur the same problems over and over again because there will be people that don't need that therapeutic type of coaching. But I would hazard a guess that the online space is going in a way where most people have specific issues that revolve not around nutrition and training, but around the deeper stuff, around values and priorities and understanding themselves, which that's where we're playing the game now. People that were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they were intermediate lifters that were staying in shape. they already knew the nutritional habits. They already had stuff that was relatively fine. So they didn't have any deep-rooted issues that were causing them to not eat food. Whereas when the game changed and it's more general pop now, they're not following their nutrition, not because they don't want to, not because they got no discipline, but because they are simply unaware of what else is working on them from an emotional perspective, from a self-belief perspective, from a education perspective. So therefore the game has to change. So like, I think for the most part, I wouldn't change my evolution. I really think it's come at a good time. And I like that side. And I always say that if you're a coach and anyone is listening to this, you have to go to the end perception. You have to seek alternative perspective at all points. Like, if you are a hard ass, go and seek what a therapist does. If you're someone that is super, super soft, go and see one of these guys that does the hard ass training and take some nuggets from it. If you're someone that is really anti-diet, go and fucking go on a meal plan, or go and understand what that means. Go on a big deficit, go and do a transformation. Because the more, in my opinion, and maybe this is confirmation bias, but you guys can tell me if I'm right on the right track, is that the more that I've gone out and spit these different sides, the better coach I've become in this mid ground that has allowed me to cater to more individuals. So, in my opinion, like, go and seek those perceptive ends of whatever it is, the spectrum. And then that middle ground, very similar to how Football Manager works or Pro Evolution Soccer, is that the more that player becomes better at defending, the more that player becomes better at striking, the better the player becomes at pace and accuracy and agility, the bigger their overall skill number comes, the better they become. They become a 90 instead of an 85. You've always got those players on FIFA, right, that are super, super fast, like 95 pace, but they can't hit barn door with a banjo. And like, they're great for running down the wing, but they can't cross the ball in. And then you're like, well, at what point, when does quality work? When does being an overall better person or a better player actually help your team and your squad and your coaching? So for me, I've always tried to, normally out of my failures, go and seek that specific subset. And then once you've found that, you become an overall better mid-ground. And I think that's where we sit. We all sit in the mid-ground anyway.
Yeah. For you, it's a rarity as well, right? Because actually you seek it. Does that make sense? Like, you went from, I know what Nathan was like back in the day, right? So I knew what you were like beforehand. And then you were like, oh, I need to, and you experienced different types of coaching. And you're like, actually, you know what? Why don't I have that? Like you said, the therapy route, you've got a therapist, you understand the nuggets from the therapy, and you're like, I need to now bring it into, like, essentially my coaching world right now. So someone, like, again, who is hardcore potentially may never do that. Like, they may just be hardcore for the rest of their lives, essentially. Because if they're not seeking alternative things, it is very, very difficult. But I guess the message and the take-home message for everyone here is just be open-minded to it. Because if you are open-minded, like, it could take you to the next level with your own coaching. And if you are seeing like pitfalls in your own coaching, and you're like, okay, why am I not doing this with these clients? Why am I not getting essential results or whatever, what's going on? I need to look at myself, because, we all have to look at ourselves. We're not getting results to clients. You have to go look at your thing and what am I doing, like, essentially? Because obviously it's my messaging that I'm getting wrong, that they're not getting. Therefore, they're not executing. Therefore, no one's winning. So it's kind of understanding that winning equation for your own business as well, which I think is quite important. Any final words there, Emily?
No, I agree. The whole thing about experiencing one thing for oneself, I think it's crucial to get that understanding so you can actually convey a message as well. And I think especially if people do go down the route of body composition, if you've never ever been down that route ever in any way or form, how are you going to convey a message to the clients that you're trying to serve? You can't. Emotionally, you can't. You can theoretically, and in theory, you can be really intellectually smart, but it's something about emotional intelligence that comes with actually experience. So if you're going to have compassion for people, you're going to have to know what it feels like to do something. So yeah, that would be my final wrap up for this.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we did a big deep dive into online coaching. Hopefully clients and coaches potentially do enjoy this episode. We'll be back next week. And if you guys got any topics you want us to discuss, feel free to drop it down. Just drop us a message on Instagram or just DM us as well. And apart from that, take care.